This is a very quick and somewhat superficial introduction to grid systems that you'll be using in your career as a graphic designer. Um, I'll talk more as we go here, but basically, a grid system just gives you a place to start, makes your life as a designer much easier. If we look on the left side, you've seen this in my Gestalt video already. The objects on the left and the square on the left, they look okay, that they're together, But on the right side, you can see how the unity of those objects are intensified because they're put into a grid. In particular, and I'll look at the vertical alignment, and you'll be hearing me say vertical alignment quite a bit. This edge is vertically aligned with this edge here, if you can see my little marker on the screen there. But let's move on here, and this will become more clear as we go. We're going to look at, for this video, the work of Joseph Müller-Brockmann, a very important Swiss designer. Excuse me. And Joseph Müller-Brockmann in the 1950s was, I don't know what you would say. He was on the very far end of the spectrum of adhering to a grid system. So he had all these mathematically figured out elements of what to place where. And if you look here, you can see the typography is aligned vertically. That's a big deal. And if I go to the next cell here, you can see how he aligned everything. Again, like Müller-Brockmann was a guy who was really, really into grids. He would have make a doctrine for each composition, and he wouldn't deviate from it. So like you can see here like how he lined up all the elements, all these circular objects are in like a ratio proportion that he figured out earlier. So, and here's another part of this grid system that he had, where the center of all those circular elements are coming off just under the name of Beethoven. The center is right here, and so he composed the rest of the composition that way. Again, this guy was very doctrinaire, somewhat dogmatic about how he used grids. In fact, when you talk about a grid system, you'll a lot of times hear it referred to as the Swiss grid. There's a lot of Swiss designers, Müller-Brockmann being one of the most prominent, that used grid systems. So when you'll hear the term Swiss grid as you go on with your studies. Again, here's Joseph Müller-Brockmann again. And if we look how he broke this down, the radiuses and diameters of these circles, were all mathematically figured out, and you can see how the typographic elements below are relating to the circles above. So, and over here, like this arc, I don't know where, to be honest with you, I don't know. Like if you remember your geometry, this is called a tangent. So the tangent line that hits this big circle hits this here, and this nice arc goes through the title. This is all stuff he figured out in advance. Now, is this what we're going to do in this class? No. And again, like many designers, just use a grid as a starting point. But this guy is a good example, because he really adhered to these grids that he came up with. This is not Müller-Brockmann, and I think this might have been Herbert Bayer. I can't remember the name of the designer, and I should know it. But this is a poster for a 1923 art show. And if we break this down, this style, the Bauhaus style, was very much in this clean, modern grid kind of thing. And so you can just kind of pause the video, and I'll post this PDF on Blackboard too, to see the logic of how this designer put this together. If we look here, this little rectangle here, of course you can see the profile of the person here. This is like the mouth of the profile. Now the mouth of this profile, the width, or the height of it, the height of it is the same as here. Okay, so that's called like a measure. Okay, so like you can pick like one dimension of some element and use that dimension as a basis for all the other dimensions in your composition. This is Willy Cohen's. I think this was made in the 1990s, and this guy too was very much into the grid system. And what he did here was, if I go back, he had this photographic element, and the photo he's using, and of course he chose the photo, has this circular element here. And if you look closely, it's hard to see on the screen, but I'll post the PDF. There's another circular element here. So Willy Cohen saw the circle, he drew a line through these two, he put a circle here, and now we're talking about Gestalt principles, right? Similarity, so we're going to see circle, 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 circle. It's a way to lead the viewer's eye. So he positioned this circle based on the photographic element he chose. He vertically aligned the type with the photographic element. Let me repeat that. He vertically aligned the typography with the photographic element. That's a big deal that will really snap together your layouts, even if you're not, using a severe grid system. Have your type vertically align with the elements above or below it, and your layouts are going to come together a lot quicker. This is another Willy Cohen's piece, and if you look at the words Marge, see how nice he has everything all spaced out nice and even in this grid system here. And I'll post other materials on Blackboard that you can look at how people come up with these grids. Just more detail on how he broke this all down and how everything all fits together in these nice columns. And one more Willy Cohen's, and take a look at the grid system he used here. Very complicated. Modular grid is what this is called. And let's see what else we got here. So the point is, if you're given all this information, all this copy, and you're told to make a poster with it, instead of just trying to randomly fit everything together and staying up till 3 a.m. crying, come up with a grid system first, just to get things into place. Okay, just remember things like vertical alignment. Okay, notice that all the subheads are vertically aligned. Now some of you might roll your eyes and say, well, yeah, that's obvious. Well, no, it really isn't. If you haven't done this before, just based on experience, just a simple thing like making sure your subheads are vertically aligned really improves your layout a lot. And then it's something that if you've never done this before, you're not, if nobody told you about it, you might not be aware of it. So it sounds obvious in retrospect. So just take a gander at this PDF, and this last little image here is just a reminder that the more expensive stuff gets, the more designed it is. Okay, like everything that goes into mass production, where people have to spend a lot of money on it. People spend a lot of time working with these grids, proportions, and making sure everything is aligned. So here's the moral of the story, folks. When you're given a design problem and you have to make a two-dimensional layout, impose a grid on the canvas, and you'll start to get a more clear idea of where everything is supposed to go. So grids are here to help you. You're not supposed to be stuck on a grid or obsessed with a grid. They're just here to get a place to get you started.